Is GTA Definitive Edition worth buying on the Switch? I think it's time for a definitive answer. And welcome to Mike Techs It Out. I'm Mike if you're new, and this is a channel where I talk about things around the house and I don't review games. But I was doing a live stream and someone asked me about the state of GTA Definitive Edition on the Switch. It went to sleep mode when I held it up. But I'm here to talk about it today. And I'm gonna preface this by saying I haven't really beat any of the games. I don't play games a ton. I don't have a ton of time because aside from YouTube, I also work 40 hours a week. So my original plan was to play the whole trilogy in order. So I started off with 3, and 3 is probably where I put the most amount of time into. I probably put like 8 hours in 3. And then 3, I realized was boring because the story wasn't great. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna say it. So I wanted to play San Andreas because that's the one I have the most nostalgia for. So I probably put 5 hours in San Andreas. Vice City I hadn't touched yet. So I literally just started when I was recording B-roll for this video. So I've only put like an hour into Vice City. It's not because Vice City is the worst game. It's just that once I bounced off of 3, I was like, I wanna go to the best one. Vice City's kind of in the middle, but I do think it's a lot better than 3 story-wise at least. So that's how much time I put in each game so far. This is definitely not a review of the story content. This is more so, is this playable and is it worth buying it for the Switch based off of the amount of time that I've put into it. So all these issues that I run into that I'm going to discuss in the video is based off of my playtime with it. And I'll also say that like the initial bugs that people were running into with textures and the rain and all that stuff, I really didn't personally notice it. I think it was a little bit overblown in my opinion. I mean, I played Cyberpunk on PC when it first came out. That game was broken. That game immediately, there were people's hands missing, there was items disappearing. Like, it was ridiculous. That game was definitely broken. These games were nowhere near in that state, but I understand that the expectations are going to be different because this is a remaster of an older game that really didn't have any of these issues. But like I said, a lot of the textures and weird stuff that people complained about, I really didn't run into in my playthrough so far. So let's go ahead and break down the question of, is this worth buying or not? I'm going to start with the issues. First thing I want to start with affects all 3 of the games, and this is the biggest issue. I'm starting with the biggest issue, and that is the resolution and frame rate on the Switch specifically. So the game just doesn't really look that sharp on the Switch. Now, I've been exclusively playing in handheld mode, and all this footage was captured in handheld mode because I feel like the whole point of getting the Switch version is to play it handheld. If you have another way of playing the remastered trilogy, I would definitely recommend it because the Switch version is by far the worst as far as frame rate and resolution. But with that being said, this is only a 720p screen. So you mean to tell me that you couldn't pull off 720p at a stable 30 frames per second on the Switch? Like, the hardware is not that bad. It's not the greatest hardware, but I feel like for something that looks like this, that you should be able to pull that off. I think I noticed it the most when I started playing San Andreas because I was playing 3, and 3 was never a good looking game anyway. It was definitely the worst out of the 3. All the games were kind of fugly, to be honest, which is probably why I didn't notice a lot of the texture issues and glitches that people complained about, because when I played these games, even at the time when they came out, maybe people looking back with rose-tinted glasses, but they were bad looking at the time. Like, the GTA never had great graphics until like GTA 4 came out. The graphics were already behind, even in PS2 days. Even by those standards, the graphics were fugly. It got away with it because of how massive the games were, but the graphics were not great. So again, I don't really care that much about the graphics, but in the same token, this isn't like that great of a remaster. Like, they touched it up, yeah. And I do dig the new art style, but it's not drastically different from the original games. The lighting and reflections definitely look a lot better. Like, especially when I played Vice City, I just noticed how it popped when I went in the neon lights, and it was looking really good, but not good enough where I think that this shouldn't run at full 720p on the Switch, at least at 720p 30. But the fact that they can't even do 720p and a stable 30 on the Switch, it just makes it feel like it's a game that's not optimized at all, because like I said, it doesn't look that good. I mean, look at Breath of the Wild, first game on the Switch, massive game, better graphics than this. It still mostly managed to hit 30. I mean, yeah, there was parts where it dipped, but at least it looked a lot better than this. I think you notice it the most on the Switch when you go from like a cutscene and then you go back to actual gameplay and you're like, this looks kind of fuzzy. It's hard to see further away, but like when you're staring at the screen up close like this, you can definitely notice like how fuzzy it looks. It's not unplayable again. is fine. I don't know, I just felt like they could have done a little bit better. The next issue I experienced was only with San Andreas. So for some reason, and I don't know if it's just me, but the shooting in San Andreas just feels really weird. There's an issue with the auto lock, so they kind of updated the shooting to make it feel like, you know, more like the modern games like GTA 5. For some reason, when I'm playing with the auto lock in that game, it feels like it locks onto the target for 2 seconds and then it just stops, even if they don't move anywhere. So I don't know what it is, and I didn't experience this when I was shooting in Vice City or in GTA 3. It seems like this was mostly in San Andreas, and it was to the point where I just switched it back to the classic shooting because you do have the option in the menu to do that. But yeah, that was a weird thing. Like I said, it might just be a me thing, I'm not sure. But it seemed like I really only noticed it in San Andreas. The other thing in San Andreas, and this really got on my nerves, was the load times. Not just the load times, the way that it loads when you go in and out of a building, even like your safe house or your home. If you exit a building, it takes a while to load. Like, I don't even know, it feels like close to a minute. It might be shorter than that, but it definitely feels long. And I think it feels so long because there's nothing on the screen. So if you have something like the Switch OLED where, you know, black is pretty much the screen is completely off, it's really jarring. I was playing it and I went out of the house and I was like, did the game crash? Did the system turn off? I couldn't even tell. I don't know, maybe they should have just had some kind of loading screen or some kind of text up there to let you know that the game was loading, because it takes a while. And I feel like, again, if this game was better optimized, they probably wouldn't even really have that much of a load. And I think that that's what they were anticipating. That's why the screen just turns black, that it'll be a shorter load. But clearly they didn't achieve that. And since they didn't achieve that, they should put something in place to let you know that the game's loading. And the funny thing is, if you go to Vice City, like if you go out of your safe house there, it only takes a few seconds to load, and it has text in the bottom corner saying, like, you know, what part of the city you're in. So you know that it's loading because it shows you like, oh, you're about to go to this area because it's in the corner. Whereas San Andreas doesn't have that, and it makes that loading issue even worse. The other thing I should mention that's also an issue is the driving. So that's where you're gonna see your main choppiness. Now this did improve a little bit from the original release before they patched it. It just happened more frequently before, but it's kind of like a micro stutter. Like, it never stopped me from enjoying the game, but now it just happens less frequently, but you'll still notice like a micro stutter, especially when you get up to higher speeds where you're really zooming through traffic. Also, it seems like if you're on the interstate, like there's a lot of popping, especially if you're going against traffic and you're driving really fast. It just seems like cars just kind of pop in. These are really minor issues. It's still improved. Like, it's good enough where it's still playable. Like, it's good enough. That's the whole that's the whole story of this game. Now, the good thing is, it's still GTA 3, Vice City, and San Andreas. They're still very fun games. Like, while everyone was online complaining about it, I personally was still having fun with it. I really didn't care as much. I just wanted a chance to play it portable, especially on a screen that's awesome like this on the Switch OLED. So I'm still having fun with the games. I still had fun with the games. Right now I'm playing Pokemon Arceus, to be honest, and that's taking up most of my time. But I still have been hopping back and forth in between them. All the negative press hasn't stopped me from playing the game and enjoying it. And I really do like the new art style. I know some people hate it, but I think it does look better. I just wish that this whole thing could have been executed a lot better and they would have spent more time on it. And to kind of summarize everything, I don't think that it's really ever going to be fixed. Like, I don't think it's ever going to run better on the Switch. I think this is what the game's going to be. They'll probably do some more bug fixes, maybe. But that's all we're going to get. So I think we're going to get this lower than 720p resolution at 30 frames per second, still with the occasional stutter. And that's what we're going to be stuck with. So is the game worth buying? At $60, I don't recommend it. Even though I bought it at full price and I enjoy it, I wouldn't recommend somebody else buy it at this price. I think a good price would probably be around the $20 to $25 range. That would be a fair price for what this is, considering I don't really believe that they're ever going to really improve the resolution and frame rate for this game on Switch. And at that price, I think it's still fun enough to justify, but definitely not at $60. So I don't recommend it at $60. Wait for it to go on sale. If it doesn't go on sale soon, then it'll probably be on sale around Black Friday this year, and that's when I would look to buy it. And maybe they'll even have it at some places for under $20. You never know, depending on how well this does sales-wise. But that's all I have to say about GTA Definitive Edition. I'll be back on Sunday for another sensational Sunday news. And of course, I'm going to talk about that whole Bungie thing. So stay tuned. And if you enjoyed this video, then make sure to tell a friend, tell a coworker, like, share, and subscribe, and always do at least 2 things at the same time. Peace.